Hello, let's talk about how to add a new component into your GUI Next repository. Just brand new component. And for that, we have some really handy tools. So let's switch to VS Code. And when you want to add a component in GUI now, you have to copy paste things to get some boilerplate, or you just create things from scratch. GUI Next has a utility specifically for that. It can be run as yarn component, and that's pretty much it. You can specify the name right away, but let's take a look at all of the things that we have here. So it is the component generator for GUI. You enter the component name. Let's call it my fancy component. Click enter. Then you have the choice of three different available categories: block, component, UI. In order to better understand what are those categories, they are mapped to the types specified by shadcn. So component, lib, UI. We have block component, UI. These are the types of the components that we can build with the yarn component script. For this purpose, let's just select two as just regular component. Block is for really complex components which contain multiple custom components. UI is just simple UI component like a button or some very tiny little thing. So usually you will use category 2 component. Let's click enter. And here we go. It gives you all the summary of what has been done. So it created component directory, registry default component, because we said it should be component. If we would go and create another component and would say, let's say UI, so that it is going to be some very tiny thing, it would create the registry default UI, another component. This is the folder for our component, right? So it created several files: view file, stories file, test file, and MDX. MDX is the advanced documentation file for Storybook 9. So this script creates all the boilerplate for you. Component created successfully. Generated files. It tells you what to do as the next steps. It tells you that registry entry created. We will talk about registry later in another video. And important information what to do with that registry entry. Again, registry is going to be covered in different in another video. But now let's take a look at the let's take a look at this UI component. So I command click on the name of the component. And here we go. The component is created for view 3 with a dummy property that it's up to you to change this, right? Very handy utility for merging the CSS classes. You can, when you use this component in your consumer project, you can add classes and they will be merged with this BG primary one. Very simple thing. It creates test boilerplate. It creates stories boilerplate, and as I said, advanced MDX file for boilerplate. Let's take a look. Yarn start. So both of the components that we generate, the component and the UI. Yes, let's on 6007. So we have my fancy component. This is the component that we create. It is placed under the component category, and the UI, another component. They look the same because they have exactly the same boilerplate, but this is the way to get proper reliable structure for your components. Now let's try to make these components a bit more interesting, or actually let's remove one of those. Let's remove or actually let's remove this fancy component. and stick to another component. So we go to this view component again. If we go to our storybook, here we go. This is the component. Let's try to see how we can add standard shadcn-vue components into these components. You can find the list of all the shadcn-vue components in the shadcn-vue because we are using the view port of shadcn. And you can find it at shadcn-vue.com. And there are plenty of the components. There is a really, really good collection of components, which in a lot of cases overlap with GitLab UI. But for the sake of simplicity, let's just try and add a button component into our UI component. Let's just create a customized version of this button. So we go to the shadcn-vue component site. We find this component and it gives us the installation. So we are using Yarn. As you can see, there is no difference between npm and Yarn. So we just copy, go to our terminal. Yes, let's do clear. And then paste, add button. Now watch what will happen. So shadcn will reach out to shadcn-vue registry, check the button component, pull in all the dependencies of that particular component, not the whole package, but that particular component, all the things that are required for that particular component, and install them. But here's the thing. It is very slow now because it tries to identify one thing. The problem is I already have that button component installed in Duo UI Next. So what it does now, it checks the version of the button component in my local workspace to the one that is available in the shadcn-vue repository. So this is what it says. The folder button already exists. Would you like to override? Yeah, let's just try to override and create a new folder. But then it says skipped 2 files because they are identical, right? So both button view and index.ts that constitute this button component are the same, so they are not overwritten. Let's take a look at this view file and index. So button view is just regular button component, which is very simple, right? But the index.ts is a really nice and interesting thing. It creates variability to the button component. This is the same thing that we used to do in current Duo UI with a lot of like conditions, and then if that, then apply this set of classes. If that, apply this set of classes. But this is a proper variability mechanism where it can have more than 2 options. For example, if you take a look here, we define the button variants for default, destructive, outline, secondary, ghost, link, and also we define different sizes: default, small, large, and icon. So all of this will be part of the button, and we will be able to specify those as the props. And with every specified variant and size, a specified set of classes, utility classes, will be applied to that button. So because we abstracted that complexity to this index.ts, the button component itself is really minimalistic. It's very, very simple, right? Here is where it fetches all the variants from this file, button variants. So it checks based on the props variant and size. It goes and fetches classes from this definition, which is really cool. Makes components really, really easier to maintain. Now, we have the button component. Let's go and just import it. Import button. And now you can see that it automatically suggests where to pick it from. All of the components that you install from the standard shadcn-vue repository end up in your src, what is it? src components UI. If these are UI components. Again, that registry in shadcn was created with exactly the same thing, with the same idea of different types. So when you install a UI component, a component that is defined with UI category in shadcn registry, it will end up in src components UI. If you install something that is specified as a component in shadcn registry, it will end up in src components component. So in this case, button is just an example of a simple UI element. That's why it ended up in the UI button. And you saw how simple it is with the completion. So it's just because the tools in VS Code know how shadcn work and where to fetch things. Again, based on the configuration as well, of course, like the alias and the location for different components. Now, let's add this button to our, so let's just let's remove this example prop, or actually let's leave it for now. So we add button, save, go to our storybook, and yeah, so where is it? Let's restart the okay, yarn install needs to be done. Yarn install, something was missing apparently. And then we can do yarn start to start the storybook, and we will check our another component. So it opens it automatically, but we go to the another component. There is nothing here, which is weird. Let's double check things. So button is here, UI button, button. Oh right, of course we need to add some text to the button. This is a fancy button, and let's remove this default background primary so that it would not be black. So here we go. Default value is our default value for the example prop. Let's remove this after all, okay? And then we just end up with the button, this fancy button. We can now use different variants. Let's make it destructive. So variant, and oh, wait a second. It is, yes, variant. Button variant. Destructive. Reload, and it's destructive, right? We can also go to and do outline, for example. We can also add size. Let's make it LG. So it's outline with large style button. All of the buttons from all of the components in shadcn UI come with accessibility first. They're built on top of the what's that package? What? Where is it? I completely forgot the name of that package. Rika UI. This is the package that provides very unstyled, very raw components, but highly accessible. So all of the accessibility things are taken care of there. That's how you add standard shadcn components to your custom component in Duo UI Next. So yarn component is the command that helps you create new components in Duo UI Next very easily, with all the boilerplates in place, all the best practices in place, taken care of for you. You can add new UI components from shadcn library whenever you need. We will talk about theming and customizations later, but the basics is just that. You just use shadcn add, shadcn-vue add component, and then you get the component. It gets downloaded to your local folder of Duo UI Next, and then you can just add it to Git and push if your component needs that UI component from shadcn. if you need different types of the components, like big component consisting of different custom components, you create a component with category block. If it's just regular component, you create with category component. And if it's a very tiny, very isolated, very scoped UI element like a button, you create it with a category UI. So this mechanism, how is it relevant to our goals that we want to pursue with Duo UI Next? Obviously, this is targeting the developer experience. Instead of creating everything from scratch or copy pasting and fine tuning, we have this tool that creates all the boilerplate for you right away. And what you really need to do is just get to your component and create the logic. Get to the tests and write the tests. Get to your story and write the documentation for your component. You do not need to think about different copy pasting things.